Max Lindquist, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good, Lenny. Appreciate it. How about yourself, sir?
Good, good. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you got some things going on in the background that I'm sure you'll reach out and let everybody know when you can. Um, how did round four go at High Point?
It was a pretty solid weekend. Just pretty subpar weekend on my part, riding wise, but can't complain. Good weather. I mean, not good weather, but good track conditions, and overall solid weekend.
The when we talked on Friday night, there was some moisture and things like that, and it turns out that Saturday's racing was really good.
Yeah, we got a little rain. The first couple practices were a little sloppy. Like our first time qualifier, the track was a little slippery and had some slime on it, but really it made for a great day of racing. Track came around, got super tacky, got pretty choppy because of the moisture in the ground, and I think it made for a good day of racing, both pro and amateur.
Well, that's awesome. Did you get to watch any of the amateur races on Saturday at all?
A few of them. Let's see here. I watched like one of the A classes. There was a really good race there early on in the day. More was watching to see how the track was developing. Watched one of the 450As. I think Cale Deal took the overall in that one. Was a good battle for the top three, but it was more of a one-line track yet at that point. And that's kind of why we were watching, was to see as the race went, like you could see some guys starting to move around and starting to like hit some of those wetter, slicker lines, but yet like they were starting to blow the top off and get to a good underneath surface.
It worked out great for you guys in the pro class, didn't it?
Yeah, it worked out quite awesome. I mean, even by our second qualifier, like at 11:30, the track was really starting to come around. I'd say by noon, like any race after noon really had a pretty racy track.
That's awesome. Did you get to watch the WMX at all?
I caught the start of that one, and then I saw the end of the second moto. But kind of was a pretty similar day. I cannot think of the girl's name off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. That took second place. But she had a really good
Olivia Joiner.
Yes, sir. Thank you. She had a really good day. A stellar ride for her, staying in front of Niamh Shaw, who's obviously a tough competitor. I think that was in the first moto that I seen part of that. And she looked like she rode probably better than she had all season. So congrats to her on the second place. And then obviously the champ Kinsey was same old, same old. It was another stellar weekend for her, just clicking off laps and, putting in the time and taking home the victory. And then Niamh Shaw rounding out the podium. Obviously, I'm sure she would like to do better, but also with the track conditions and stuff, it wasn't necessarily in her favor by her starts per se.
I don't know how she did on the starts, but I know Olivia holeshotted both motos.
Yeah, she was on her game. And so I didn't see the one start, so I didn't know, but I knew she was up front both motos, and I did see the end of the one, and like she's definitely holding her own, riding very well.
Yeah, I hadn't heard much about her until this round. So I got to do a little investigation on my own to find out a little bit more about this young lady and see where she's coming from. Is to come out there and beat Niamh. That even if the track conditions weren't primo, that's still, she had to have been riding really well.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately, I'll be totally honest, and didn't see the whole extent of both races, but seen some laps, and what I did see, like she definitely wasn't really holding anyone up too bad. That's for sure. Obviously to pull both hole shots, like mentally, she obviously was there and executed and did what she needed to do, and that's any good rider, that's what you do on a day like that when the track conditions aren't the greatest. You get yourself a good start and you click off good solid laps and just ride your pace.
And that's what she did. And it
Yeah.
got her in the 2 spot on the podium.
Yes, sir.
Well, congratulations to that young lady. Well, to all 3 of them, I mean, Niamh being on the podium helps her points chase. So she's solid in second, and Kinsey's, obviously locking down that number 1 spot. So congratulations to all 3 of those ladies.
I can agree with that. So definitely a good weekend of racing.
And in the Pro-Am, I don't want to get these wrong because I always get them confused. JJ Londerville won Pro-Am, didn't he?
He won Pro-Am. Mason Jackson won Pro Sport.
Okay. And wasn't JJ on the podium in the Pro Sport?
Second.
And Mason was on the podium
for Pro-Am.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 2 are really starting to separate themselves, I'd say, and show that those are going to be the 2 guys to beat. Like those, I can see those 2 having some good battles throughout the rest of the season.
And Mason came back from an injury. He missed most of last year or the whole year, didn't he?
Yeah, knee injury, ACL. I think like basically a blown out knee. As far as I'm not sure the extent of it, but I know it was ACL and 1 or 2 other ligaments. Like he was full on knee surgery and recovery. So yeah, he's coming out and definitely performing very well for the injuries he's coming off of.
I saw Brett Music was on the podium in one of the classes. I think it was Pro Sport.
Yes, sir.
And who was on the podium in the Pro-Am? Was it Blair Miller?
No, actually Kevin Saar, our pro rider from overseas.
Right. Yeah, he got second.
Which he did get second. He is also going to be another one if he continues to run the Pro-Am. He's got the pace of Mason Jackson and JJ. Like those 3 are definitely going to push each other all year and mix. Like I could see those guys swapping positions depending on start per moto.
Well, you add Saar in there and you still have Miller and Chambers that I didn't see their results, so I don't know how they did.
So there was a pile up in the first moto with Chambers and I think Miller. So those 2, the first moto kind of took themselves out of it and were in the back of the pack to start the moto and then kind of had to work their way up. And then the second moto, neither one of them, if I recall, had a real great start either. Basically not a good weekend hole shot wise for Blair Miller or 914 there. I'm sorry, I just said his name and can't think about
Chambers.
it. Yeah, neither one of them had a good weekend for hole shots. And then at least Sunday, the track, they had more rainy conditions. Like it was a little slipperier, heavier mud, a little tougher track to be able to make some moves on. And I think that kind of held those guys up a little bit.
Well, yeah, if you're in the back, if you get a bad start and it's a one-liner and it's slick, you're not going to the front.
Yeah, I mean, Mason Jackson did a very good job in the 1 moto, coming through the pack pretty good. In the second moto, actually, he was like a mid-pack start and worked his way up around 4 or 5 guys up into the second spot, and then back. It was a really great race, the second moto. He caught up to Jaden, and then Kevin Saar tagged along with Mason Jackson, and those 3 for the last like 2 or 3 laps were there. I mean, you could almost like throw a blanket over them. Like they were really tight, and Jaden just continued to ride that main line and just hit his marks and not overdo it. As it actually started raining during the moto, and Mason, I think, got to a point where he had to pull his goggles, and I think he was more just trying to stay where he was at. And then Kevin was really starting to apply the pressure to Mason, which was pushing the whole group.
Well, that's awesome. But Kevin's also got more, I think, more bad weather riding experience than most all of you guys, because, coming from Europe, you're racing in the mud more than you're not.
Moto 1, he won. He won the first moto. Came out and everyone was kind of up in the air. I think big tires, little tires, and he threw the big tires on, and like he was one of the only ones with big tires on. Takes off, rips a hole shot, and just left the field. Like he looked like he was a veteran in the mud, like plain and simple. And then second moto, everyone was back on small tires, and he just didn't get as good of a start that moto. And I think that was pretty much the difference. That second moto was just basically the way the top three guys came out. JJ Londerville had a good start, got out front, got the clean air, where the other two guys, Mason and Kevin, both had to come through the pack, and that was kind of just how it played out. But made for really good racing. So
that's awesome. And you know, and those guys are battling back and forth, which is in two different classes, makes it kind of tough. I mean, well, really, you have 5 guys that can win in either class on any given day, maybe 6.
I was gonna say, definitely like didn't see much out of Blair Miller or Joseph Chambers this weekend, so I'd expect them guys to have a good round here in the future. Really haven't seen Chambers do a ton yet, so I would assume like he's got to be due for a good race here soon. Like obviously we know he's fast, and then Blair's usually like at the start of the year he was killing the starts, and he just didn't seem to be on his game this weekend on the gate. So I would assume to see him pull some starts again and be up in that mix, and that'll throw, you know, jockey the field up as well.
Yeah, I would expect to see him back, you know, in Ironman. Do you have any idea what the weather's going to be like in Ironman?
I honestly haven't looked yet. It's starting to warm up here back home. Like we're looking into next week, seeing warmer weather as in 60s, maybe 70 if we're lucky. So don't, you know, try not to be too cold over there, Lenny. But I would assume usually this time of year, you're 60, 70 degrees. Hopefully you don't get a cold spell. The big thing racing this far north this early in the year is just the rain. We get a lot of rain in the Midwest this time of year, so it's more crossing our fingers that we don't have a rerun of last year's pro race. We could do without needing to bring our jet skis this next weekend.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Or you know, you just bring a 4x4 and, you know, roll that up there. I got to talk to Caesar, and he mentioned that mud race in our conversation. He said he just rolled off the start and rolled it into the trailer because he couldn't justify riding, you know, in that environment.
Yeah, he may have been the smartest one of all of us. I don't know. That was crazy conditions. I mean, there's not many times you ever see anything happen like that in ATV motocross, at least. So definitely a situation that I don't think any of us were prepared for, and definitely a day that really changed the field up. So
Right. Yeah, I totally get it. So, you know, let's get into the pro class and talk about how the day went. I think something happened in Moto 1 that normally hasn't happened all year. Some guy on the 2-bike did something really cool.
Yeah, just decided to, you know, take off when you're supposed to and grab some gears, get to that first turn halfway decent. No, I took a gamble. Muddy conditions, everyone was kind of packing up the inside of the gates, and I didn't get to really go to the second qualifier with some bike issues, so I just decided to wing it and go wide and see what happens. And sure enough, I decided to pull a good start from the outside and kind of roll with it from there. And it was good to see that pace and get to run up front with the top guys again. Obviously, I wasn't necessarily prepared for it, but it was a good learning curve for me just to see where I'm at compared to where they're at and figure out what I need to change. And from there, obviously Joel pulled the start and I was right behind him. So he pretty much did his usual and decided to make us all look slow and take off. especially at this track, he's really good at it. So he was on another level. And then when it came to the rest of the field, it was pretty much our top 7 in a train. Rastrelli, Ford, Hoag, Chad. There was a good battle of us there all the way pretty much through the entire moto. I think I was third until lap 5, 6, somewhere in there, like the halfway point. And then I started getting shuffled back. I know Hoag and Ford were swapping positions. Hoag actually got around Chad for a little bit until Chad kind of regrouped and moved his way forward. So it was a really good all-around battle for the top 7 positions.
That's awesome. What I did hear and what I did see is that Joel Hetrick put on a clinic.
Yes. Joel Hetrick was pretty much what everyone expected and probably more. He fastest qualifier, both hole shots, won both motos. Just was kind of in a league of his own on Saturday.
That's kind of what I seen on the information that I could gather on social media. If I'm not mistaken, which I could be on the time, 16 seconds.
Yeah. At least one of the motos. I think the first moto he was way out, and then I think the second moto, Chad and Rastrelli got a better start right behind him and were able to tag along a little longer. But both motos, he really kind of had something figured out that none of us did, because he definitely put a gap on the field.
Jeffrey got second in the first moto. Did he gap that little group a little bit, or did he just stay right in front of you guys?
No, he got around me and he put in some really good laps, and I got himself a little bit of breathing room. I don't know, say 2-3 seconds, maybe it was 4. But he got himself enough breathing room to where like he was pretty much just clicking off laps, and it was kind of Joel, Jeffrey, and then the other group of 5 guys. And that was more everyone kind of knocking on my door, and then those guys as well swapping positions.
Having those guys behind you, did it change your perspective of the season a little bit, or just a little bit of culture shock for you?
To be honest, like it was a little bit unexpected, I guess. Like lining up, I was on a different setup than normal, and then I didn't really practice much. So like going into that first turn and coming out in second, like it was a good thing Joel was in front of me to kind of watch and study what he was doing. But then definitely after not being up there for a while and getting back out in front of those guys, I definitely rode a little tighter and tenser than I normally do, which didn't help me late in the moto. But it also was good to run up there and see what those guys are doing and where they're at. Obviously I wasn't quite on pace. Need to just go home and do some more work, but it was at least good to see where we're at and what I need to work on, and also motivating to keep going forward.
Well, that's staying motivated is what it's all about. In the second moto, did Chad come out in second, or did he have to pass Rastrelli?
He should have came out second, if I can recall correctly, and then Rastrelli should have been right behind him. I'm pretty positive that's how that came out. And I think the second moto was a little more, not laid back, but action-wise, I think it was much more the way the order came out is kind of the way it stayed. There was a really tight group of Brandon Hoag, Bryce Ford, Jeffrey Rastrelli, and Nick Gennusa. Like those 5 guys were really tight for the majority of the race. I don't necessarily know from where they started to where they finished what all happened. But that was a good battle all moto. And then I had a terrible start, went from great start the first moto to terrible start the second moto. So I kind of got into seventh and was in between the groups. I was kind of watching those guys, and then there was a gap to the group behind me. So I kind of got to see that battle, and there was definitely some bar banging going on there with those 5 guys. Made for good spectating.
You know, I want to ask you a question about Kevin Saar.
Yep.
Do you think him riding in the Pro-Am class, or it's the Pro Sport class, is going to benefit him with you guys in the Pro class?
I believe so. I mean, he is killing the, like, I think he's been killing the Pro-Am class, like riding very well, looks really good on the machine. And I think a lot of it's just you're a pro coming into somewhere you've never been and riding all these different tracks that you've never been on a machine that is similar to what you have at home, but not what you have at home. So, I mean, I think he's doing quite well. And I think that's why he's running the Pro-Am and why he looks so good in it is I mean, unfortunately you can't compare the tracks, but like, I would assume he's probably faster on Sunday. Just getting that extra seat time on the machine and learning the track. And I think he's going to continue to do it all year, because for him, what better practice than a race format to go out on tracks in a machine that aren't necessarily yours.
Right. I agree with that. I can't wait to have a conversation with him to find out what he's thinking. And, you know, congratulations to the guys on the podium, Joel, Chad, and Rastrelli. You know, you can't take anything away from the rest of you guys, you know, with Bryce Ford with 4th, Gennusa with the 5th, Mr. Consistency right there, you know, keeping that, you know, top 5 spot. And, you know, Brandon Hoag had a good ride, and then you in the 7th. So all you guys seem to be doing really well. There was a change with Stanfield seemed to have some type of issues. I don't know. I think he was 8th or 9th.
Yeah. From what I heard, just not quite comfy this weekend, just kind of wasn't on his game. And I think he plans to change that coming up. So it's kind of what I got out of that conversation. Just don't know if something was, you know, didn't explain what was all going on, just wasn't his weekend, and looking forward to the next one.
It happens, right? Didn't Aaron move up a couple spots, or if I'm missing that?
Maybe the first moto, but the second moto had some mechanical issues.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I'm trying to catch it all in and then remember it, because I never seem to, when we sit down to do this, I never seem to check right before.
Oh, I need to do the same, so I don't blame you. So, because I understand,
well,
but yeah,
I was talking to Gage Beebe about hybrids just before you and I started. So,
oh boy, lots to talk about there.
Yeah, especially how easy. Not easy's the wrong word, but how unfrustrating it was to drop the YZ450F motor into the YFZ 450 chassis.
Interesting. I'll have to listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get super technical, but we talked a little bit about it. And man, if somebody was going to ask me about doing it, there's a kit you can buy. You buy it, buy a swing arm, you're done. Well, it's not really that easy, but it is that easy, you know?
Yeah, there's a path that you can take that will get you there quite effortlessly. So.
Yeah. I mean, they got the kit on and started working on a Saturday, and on Sunday it was ready to go to powder coat.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, none of the other ones are that easy to my knowledge.
Yes.
I don't exactly know, but hey, Max, I want to thank you very much. I know that you've got some issues. I want to let you get back to your family. Anybody that's out there that's listening, you know, shoot some prayers to the Lindquist family. If Max wants to get into those details, he will. And until then, we'll see you in Ironman, sir.
Sounds great. I appreciate it, Leonard.